I'm going to record this because I'll be putting this on my YouTube channel later. So I have a YouTube channel where I post a lot of informational stuff when it comes to buying homes, everything from simple stuff like escrows and prepays and what does that really mean down to how not to commit loan fraud, which is a really big deal, right? So today we're going to be talking really about helping you guys get started with the concept of how to buy a home. And this is going to be 101, so it's going to be extremely basic, but it's really designed to kind of prime the wheels and kind of help you get started on things and kind of understand what it is that you need to do to help yourself get completely set up to buy a house. Now, in some of this, we're going to have some fun along the way, so you will need your phones, okay, to kind of join in and join along. And I'm going to pull out my tablet because some of this stuff is going to be coming in on my tablet because I'm going to ask some questions as we go. One of the first questions we're going to do right here. So go ahead and scan that and answer the question.
By the way, I'm Rachel. I'm a realtor. This obviously is Chris, but we work together a lot, so that's why I'm here. I'm the person that shows you the houses, helps you find the houses, shops for the houses. I'm the fun one, is what I like to say. I take care of the fun stuff. He takes care of more of like the serious stuff. Yeah.
Boy, did you get
And
the
you try
bus just now.
I don't feel the bus tires yet, but they are coming.
But he handles the money stuff, so it's like the less fun part.
Yeah. So real quick question, this one right here is, what is your superpower? You guys want to take that and give me your answers real quick? And we'll compare you against other answers here. While you guys are answering this question, I'm going to go ahead and get you set up for knowing what to do here in the office. These doors are pocket doors, so they slide, they don't swing. So if you're trying to go to the bathroom, which the bathroom is out around the desk right here over to the left. If you go to the bath, that's where the bathroom is. Okay, you're welcome to take a jaunt and go out that way and do it if you need to. So those are the basics of here in the office as far as what you can do with that. And Rachel and I we're doing this. This is not an obligation. You're not obligated to work with us, but obviously we'd love the opportunity to work with you when it comes to buying your first house. And we're gonna go through some of the basics of how to set yourself up. And so here's a couple. What are your superpowers? I have one, being productive. That sounds way too businessy. Who's businessy productive here? You are. Okay. All right. The productive one in the office. Another one I love numbers. Who's the numbers person? You love numbers. Okay. Fantastic. And then somebody's got the gift of gab. Who would that be? No one's going to give that one up.
Your mom.
Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So we've got some really cool stuff. Get to know each other here real quick. When it comes to buying a house, whether this is your first time, you slide that closed?
Yeah.
Whether this is your first time buying a house, or this is your first time buying a house. Hey there, welcome. Food is over there. You have to go over that way first to grab a plate.
Yeah, grab your plate. Seriously.
Go grab a plate first. Whether this is your first time buying a house, or you bought multiple homes before, everything that happens when it comes to buying a house is really going to revolve around these three items right here. And we're going to really talk real closely about each one of these items. And there's a lot of flyers in front of you, but there's also a QR code on the table where you can download all of these if you would like to do it and not necessarily take a paper one home with you. Okay? When it comes to buying a house, credit is what opens the door. Now, credit is one of those things that most people don't necessarily fully understand because it's not entirely intuitive. There's Credit Karma, there's Credit Wise, there's an app on Capital One, there's the app that's on Wells Fargo. There's just all sorts of places where you can see credit, and it's just not intuitive on how it works because sometimes you feel like you're doing the right thing, but your credit goes down. Anybody have that experience? Right. It just feels like they're taking advantage of you because you just did the right thing and boom, there it went, right? So what's happening with your credit? Well, let's start with a credit conversation real quickly because here in essence what you're going to find out is that there are actually 16 versions of FICO. 16 versions of FICO. Why they need 16 versions, I really don't know. But FICO 2, 4, and 5 are the ones that Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax use, which are called the mortgage scores. Now that's extremely important for you because the 2, 4, and 5 is the algorithms that we're looking at, and they don't report the same way as Credit Karma, Credit Wise, or any of the other ones. In fact, as a real quick orientation, Credit Karma, Credit Wise, and some of these apps that are free, those are in essence promotional scores. The reason why that is important for you to know is because you're sacrificing your information to them, you're giving them free access to your information so that they can sell you credit. If you've ever opened up a credit card and all of a sudden you start getting more messages from people, it's because of Credit Karma, CreditWise, and one of these other apps. Because they're tracking your credit, they've seen that you've pulled your credit, and now they're gonna send you more solicitors to try to get your credit in order. Now, that's a pretty big deal. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that as far as credit. So what do you need to do as far as credit scores? First question I get a lot of times is, can I even buy a home without a credit score? The answer is yes. You can buy a home without a credit score. Now, we still have to establish credit. We have to understand how you have the ability to repay, how you've actually demonstrated responsibility, because that's really what a credit score is. It's defining your ability to repay, and it's defining your willingness and productivity when it comes to actually making responsible choices with your credit. That's really what it is. So can you do that? The answer is yes, you can do it without a credit score, but what we would have to do is we would have to establish 3 versions or possibly even 4 versions of what are considered to be non-traditional credit. So for example, your landlord, you're making regular rent payments to your landlord. We would call your landlord and say, hey, Mr. Landlord, have we been paying on time? And that would be considered as part of your credit score piece. The next thing is we can use many times car insurance. Anything that you've had for 12 months that is not a monthly, like for example, if you have a pay-as-you-go cell phone, we can't use that. But if you have a contract with like Verizon, or you have a contract with T-Mobile or one of those other ones, we can use those as non-traditional credit. Now, as far as credit scores, you can see that there's different ranges here depending on how you want to get set up. Those with the best credit scores, 780 and above, those folks are going to get the best terms possible out of the market. And here's what you need to know about how this all works. Credit is what is opening the door. But what they're doing is they're establishing how much of a risk you are to the bank. The more risk you present to the bank, the more they're going to expect from you as a reward. Which means that if your credit score is below a 620, can you buy a home? Yes, you can. But guess what? It's going to cost you more. And so it's a really,
higher interest rate.
it's going to cost you more and a higher interest
They
rate.
give you a higher interest rate than they would someone that has over a 780. That's how it costs you more.
Right, it's going to cost you more when it comes to those pieces because the credit score determines the terms on your loan. So when you're getting into credit, there's a variety of things that we look at. We're going to look at what are called installment loans. Anybody here have a car payment? Those things are crazy these days, right? I see people with $700 to $1,000 and $1,200 car payments. I'm like, holy cow, that car better be really nice. It better sing to you every morning when you get up. I mean, that's an expensive car payment, but I see them all the time because car payments now in cars are actually getting so technologically advanced that the cost for these things are pretty crazy. So installment loans are the first one, but another one that's an installment loan is like a student loan. Anybody have student loans? Those hurt, right? I feel you. I feel you right there. Student loans hurt, but you know what? We have to include those as part of your debt because at some point in time, unless they get forgiven, which there's not as many people getting them forgiven as we would hope, but they're not getting forgiven, we have to include some form of a payment there. And so installment loans play a huge role in all of this. The second one that we have is what is called revolving debt. Now revolving debt, what would that be like?
Would that be a credit card
Like
payment?
a credit card, right? So anybody here have a credit card? Okay, so revolving debt actually plays a huge role in your credit score because we get to see how you manage with an installment with your car payment. As long as you're on time, it's not a big deal. Everything is going just the way it should. But with your credit card, we can see you adding money to it and we can see you paying it back off. That plays a huge role in how you're going to qualify for buying this home. Because if you use your credit card, let's say you have a $1,000 disposable balance. In other words, they've given you a credit limit of $1,000. If you're using more than $500 on any given time, that's over 50% use. That starts hurting your credit. The higher your use is on a credit card, the more likely your credit's going to be lower. Whereas if your credit If you're using less than $300,
30%, right?
30%, less than 30%, it starts helping you. Where it really starts helping you is if you're under 10% use. Because they're not looking to see if you know how to use the card, they're looking to see if you know how to manage it. Okay, and that's really a big deal because I see a lot of people get into problems with credit cards all the time, and then they go and get a personal loan to help them get out of credit card debt, or they do something else to try to get out of some form of debt, and that can cause problems for you. Now, what can you do to help yourself improve your credit? There are some great tools. Credit Karma is a good tool. Just keep in mind that they're monitoring your credit, and if you are going to look for a car, they're going to send you other car loan possibilities because that's what they're designed to do. Having said that, they give you a free version of helping you track your credit. You can also go to annualcreditreport.com and you can download your own credit report there actually very easily.
What is that?
Annualcreditreport.com.
Annual?
Yeah, annualcreditreport.com, and you can download your own credit report very easily there and see what's on your credit report. Because sometimes it's what you don't know. It's like Muhammad Ali said, it's the punch that you never saw coming that knocks you out, right? It's the same thing on your credit. And it could be, I've seen people have collections, medical collections, that nobody even knew they had. Because some random visit to the doctor never got billed correctly, and now you've got something in collections. And that's actually a pretty big deal to make sure that you're getting yourself understanding where your credit is so that you can set yourself up for success as you go along. All right, now this is another question here real quick. I want you guys to go ahead and answer. What, you want to say?
Also, when you do get on the home buying process started, Chris is a tool to help you with your credit.
Yeah.
So all that sometimes goes over people's head, including mine, and what I like to say is, if you talk to Chris, he'll actually look at your credit and figure out for you what tips and tricks you can do to fix your credit.
That is correct. And
So
many times it's what
I always like to say that mortgage lenders are sometimes little financial advisors because they're kind of for free, because you don't have to pay him, but he's going to look at that because he wants to help you buy a house. He's gonna look at your credit and he's gonna actually tell you what you can do. He's gonna give you the answers to the test, basically. He's gonna tell you, do this, do this, do this, and that's gonna raise your credit. So I would go to Chris. That's my thing. If you want help with credit, Chris understands the process more than anybody, and he'll be able to tell you how to fix it.
We can certainly set you up, there's no
Yes.
question about that. I'm not a credit counselor, so if you have a lot of stuff going on, it may have to get you connected to somebody, but there are
you
opportunities.
have that
to be able
connection to get them connected to somebody, so, yeah.
Mhm.
Before you go much further, so if you use your credit card, you have a $500 limit, and you spend $300, no, $300, so over 50%, but then you pay it off, that still hurts your credit?
Because when it's all about when it reports. So the question, did everybody hear the question? The question is, if I have a $500 limit on my credit card and I've used $300 on it, but I'm paying it off in full every month, does it hurt me? That's the question, did I hear it right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is a valid question because we have a lot of people that need to use this, or they use this so they can accrue points, or they can do other things with their credit cards, right? I actually do this with my credit card. But I do something a little differently. I pay it on the 15th and I pay it on the 1st so that I never have a balance that gets reported that's higher than 50%. So you have to think through it because it's all about the reporting. If they report it over 50% balance, it's gonna put you in a place to where your credit is gonna come down. And so if you use your credit card on a regular basis like that, every time I get paid twice a month, on the 15th and on the 1st. And so what I'm doing is I'm automatically on the 16th, I'm making a payment on my credit card, and on the 1st, I am making a payment on my credit card so that I'm never over top of that 50% balance, okay? All right, so the question was, if you were a hot dog shipwreck on an uninhabited island and starving, would you eat yourself? Very valid question, right?
No. Well,
That was out of left field.
Not really. No. Yeah, where are you going with this
So
one?
this is getting in touch with your 9-year-old self. You can see right there.
Well, you have to be 9.
No, you're just getting in touch with your 9-year-old self here, okay? All right, So it looks like most of you said no, which is disappointing. 66% of you said no, so I guess we're gonna stick with no at this point. All right, so let's talk about income real quick, because income plays a huge role in how you're getting paid. Not only in how you're getting paid, but how you're gonna qualify for this home. Now, when we're looking at income, we're not just looking at what you're making, we're comparing it to what you owe. Okay? And so here's kind of some simple math to kind of help you understand when you get home how you can figure this out. If you take your total gross income,
Gross means
pre-tax, before tax, not what you're getting in your paycheck actually gets come home, but what your gross is, meaning if you're getting paid $25 an hour, times 40 hours a week, what is that total? What does that mean? If it's 17, whatever it is right there as well. Okay, let's just use round numbers to help everybody get into the same perspective as far as what that means. If you're getting paid $40,000 a year, let's just use 40,000 as a total. Okay, 40,000, what that means is I can use up to half of that for your total debt. So that means if you're getting paid 40,000, 20,000 can go towards your total debt. That's your student loans, that's your car payment, that's your credit cards, that's anything that might be in collections, that could be child support, it could be alimony, it could be anything. As well as your house payment. Now, if you're over 50%, now we have to either reduce the purchase price, increase the income, or lower debt. Does that make sense? So we got a little bit of a slide puzzle as we're going along with this. Now, it's kind of hard to increase your income. Sometimes what we have to put people on is a plan to help them understand how to reduce their debt so that they can actually afford the home that they're looking to buy. Or we have to put some reasonable expectations in place, because maybe you want a $350,000 home, but your debt load isn't allowing you the monthly payment to make that happen. Now we may need to start looking with Rachel as far as other parts of town. Maybe you're not gonna buy in Short Pump. Maybe you're gonna buy a little bit further away. Maybe you wanna be in a little bit more rural space. That's entirely fine.
Maybe we get you something smaller.
Or something smaller. Because let me just share my story as far as what happened when I bought my first home, okay? I was 24 when I bought my first home. I had 2 kids and 1 on the way. I had literally, I don't know, anybody here have kids? Yeah. Okay. Are your kids expensive? My kids were, wow, okay, and they were just babies, okay, but let me tell you what, when I got out of diapers, I wasn't paying for diapers anymore. I thought I'd gotten a raise. I'm like, man, we got extra money, what am I gonna do with this? Okay, that's a big deal, right? If you guys are going into diaper stage, Lord bless you, keep you, okay, all that fun stuff. But here's the thing, is that I could afford the payment, but I hadn't saved up a ton of money to be able to make this work. Now, when we're looking, now that I'm in mortgages, now I understand a little bit more of how they look at some of this stuff. Because if you're in the hourly category, it's about the average of hours that you're working. Because some weeks you might work 35, some weeks you might work 105, right? Christmas season, you guys work pretty heavy? Yeah, you guys are out running around like chicken with your heads cut off, trying to get these deliveries out, right? So during the Christmas season, you might be really, really busy, but in January, you may not be nearly as busy. So guess what? We have to look at an average of time in order to be able to understand how much you can predictably make, so that when you're putting this house and buying this house, we're not setting you up for disaster, qualifying you for more house than you really can afford. Because we don't want you to lose your house. We're not about that. We're about trying to make sure that we're setting you up for success, short term and long term. And what you need to understand is you can see the continuum here: self-employed, hourly, production, piecework, commission, and salary. Salary is the most predictable. It's great, right? If you're making 50,000 or 75,000 or 100,000, doesn't matter. Every year you're making the same number. The downside of that is every year you're making the same number, right? right? Regardless of how much you work. Whereas there are opportunities within these.
I know that was coming, Chris.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to say anybody out
Never
there.
know.
But there are opportunities within these to where you can actually make more money, where you can actually do more, you can actually improve the situation for your family. And so these are actually really big pieces, by the way, to help us understand. But the more risk you have, the more of a timeline we have to look at, and the more we have to start doing averages. Because if we're expecting to use overtime, if I use the overtime that you have during Christmas, is that gonna translate to February? Many times it doesn't. We run into a lot of construction workers that are very heavy in the summer. Landscaping, for example, they're very heavy in the summer, but they have nothing to do with January. And guess what? That makes it a little harder. It means that we have to look at longer periods of time. So this is extremely important as far as how we're gonna look at it. But the overall rule of thumb is 50% of your income can be used towards all of your debt. That's really important, really important. The great piece about this too is that some of these things we can actually look at slightly differently based off of how long you've been at the company. That's a really big benefit. The longer you've been at the same company, the easier it is to average. But if you move around and you're changing companies all the time, it's really hard to predict. Because if I'm counting on overtime, I can't count on overtime from the new job. We haven't had a long enough period of time to see what's happening there. And so that overtime sometimes can fall away, can make things very difficult for us and actually make it so that you can't qualify for this home. So understanding how you're getting set up and making sure that you're consistent with it is going to be extremely important. There is a piece that you do need to know, and it's 3. If you have more than 3 jobs within 1 year, you don't qualify. It's a sign of instability. And so making sure that you keep consistent is gonna be good, because the bank really wants to know, this is a 30-year loan, can we consistently foresee you buying this house over the next 30 years? Okay, so that's the mindset that we look at when it comes to this. Now, when we're talking about assets, a lot of people think, you know, property, Bitcoin, cars. We're not really thinking about that. Bitcoin you probably can use, but you can't use it unless you cash it in, so why would you do that if it's on the right? You know, you get where I'm headed with that. Most of the time, what we're looking for when we're talking about assets is, what do you have in liquid assets? Do you have a checking account? Do you have a savings account? Do you have a 401k? Do you have stocks? Do you have family who might be willing to float you some money? Somebody who might be able to give you a gift, maybe not 40,000, but maybe they can provide you with 2 or 3. That can play a huge role in getting you set up for buying this house. Because as we get into some of the loans, especially for first-time home buyers, there are low down payments, there are no down payments, and there are grants. These are, I bought my first home, let me tell you, my first home when I bought it with a 0 down loan, 100% financing. Now, I still had to pay the legal fees for transfer, which we refer to as closing costs. But having said that, I was able to get into the house very affordably. Now, closing costs today on a home around $300,000 is going to be about $9,000 to $10,000. Okay, so you need to be prepared somewhere in that ballpark for something like that. Okay, and because of the competition that we're seeing in the market right now, which Rachel will talk more about competition here in a little bit, but as we're starting to see some of the competition in the market, that means that if you like this beautiful home down in the museum district, you're probably going to run into some competition, and the seller is going to be looking at the risk versus other buyers as well. So you may have to find a home that has been sitting a little bit longer so that you can get into your first house.
What he means by that is the homes that are sitting, I can negotiate potentially that the seller pays your closing costs for you. So that you could technically get into a home using a program with no money down, using no down payment, and I can negotiate the seller to pay sometimes even half or all of your closing costs. And that's actually very possible. It's not possible on the homes when, you know, every single buyer wants it. But there are great homes out there that maybe, you know, not a lot of people want due to, I don't know, what can I think about that? Like, who knows, like a lack of something, or a specific location. and they're having a harder time to sell, but maybe you don't mind those things. In which case, you may not mind either if I'm like, hey, the seller will give you $9,000 to close this house, and then boom, you've got a house with no out-of-pocket money. And that happens, you can ask Chris, it
It
happens a
does.
lot.
In fact, I'll share my story, going back to my story again. Now, I don't suggest you go down this path, but I bought a home that had been sitting for a while, like 50 years.
Oh,
The house was abandoned. It didn't have any windows, it didn't have any doors. I would suggest going that way because there is risk when you're buying something like that. Now, my agent did not, my realtor did not tell me about the risk.
I'm not gonna sell you anything like that.
So I actually.
I couldn't live in
Yeah.
good consciousness knowing that I sold you a house with
Yeah.
no windows or doors, okay?
Let me tell you, they didn't tell me about the risks, and so it was actually pretty serious because I put all new windows in and all new doors in before I had the keys to the house. You can see the risk, I can see it on your face. No one told me. I put thousands of dollars into this home with no guarantee that this house was gonna be mine. I wouldn't recommend you do that,
We're not gonna do that.
okay? Unless you have some form of an agreement with the seller that they're gonna reimburse you should something happen, okay? But that's not a good idea, just not a good idea. So there are other types of loans that you can get, which are renovation loans, they're not first-time homebuyer loans, but you can get other loans to actually help you get into these houses if you get into the situation. Now, as far as these are concerned, checking, savings, 401k, stocks, and gifts, I need to make sure that you know, especialmente para nuestra comunidad, that you understand that cash is not king in this case. You can't have the cash in hand, okay? Because we have to go through money laundering protocol. And you, si tienes el dinero en el banco de San Colchón, es un problema. If you have the money in your mattress, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Because we can't prove where you got that money from. I know we're all laughing at the table, but I had a guy show up to closing with a suitcase full of cash. Let me tell you what, that didn't close. It didn't close on time. Because we didn't know if he was selling pharmaceuticals on the corner, or we didn't know if he was actually getting this through the regular source of business. Now, in his case, he had sold the property in his homeland, and so we could kind of figure out how this got here. But let me tell you what, cash is a big problem. So if you have $10,000 sitting in a coffee can, it's a really good idea before you get going to put that in your bank account. Because there's a seasoning requirement that we have to go through, and it's extremely important. And if you don't believe me, don't do it, and you'll find out. Because you will not be buying the house. It's just that simple. So anything cash, make sure it gets into your bank account well before anything you're doing. Now, I've said it, there we go, okay, all right? So now, and that doesn't just apply to your cash, it also applies to gifts. So if you have a family member who's going to gift you some money, and we have that happen all the time, where family members are like, you know, I just want to bless you. I want to help you. I want to get you into a house. Like my family did. My wife's family gave us money to close on the house. If it hadn't been for that, I would have had decades of waiting to be able to get into my first house. But they gave me, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to get me over the threshold. And so sometimes priming those conversations about, hey, I'm looking to have a house, sometimes they'll actually volunteer, they'll actually offer, they'll actually do things to help you get into that place. Now, the loan types that we can talk about right here, these are the main types of loans that are available on the market. Now, it looks pretty complex, but there's really two types of loans. There's government, which include FHA, VA, which is for veterans, it's not for Virginia, it's for veterans. USDA, which is more rural, everybody thinks state, but it's kind of like state, you have to go out to the country for it. And then bond. Now, bond is usually what happens at the localized level. And so, for example, Virginia has a program through Virginia Housing that is designed to help first-time homebuyers. And that's actually similar to the program that I used when I bought my first house. Because what I did is I had to get some help. and they helped me by providing me with enough money so I didn't have to come with a down payment. That was a huge deal for me, because without that, I had enough for the closing costs. That's what my family had helped me with. That's it. Okay, and I needed that program. The bond program is designed locally by Virginia Housing to help you get into some of these programs. But there are also other grants that come around that are also through the bond base and that fit well into the government and to the convention. In January, there is a grant that comes available, which is the best grant known to mankind, but it's for a very limited amount of time. And it runs out of funds usually in about 8 to 12 weeks. And so if you're trying to get that grant, we gotta move quick. Because it starts in January, and as soon as you're out of money, you're not getting any more. Last year, it was a $15,000 grant. That's a substantial grant. It's really good. But there's only so much money in the pot, and it's a national pot. So you can imagine how quickly this money goes. So you have to be on top of it if you're looking to do it. If you're trying to get into one of those grants where you're getting a big help and big chunk to help you get into these houses, we need to be starting in November. Because if something's wrong, we want to fix it in November. We want to get you ready in December so that January you're under contract and you're one of the first ones to get this house, because it can take that long. It can take that long, okay? The Virginia Housing has a recurring grant that happens year over year. It doesn't run out of funds, but the $15,000 one does run out of funds. There's another one that is through Housing Opportunities Made Equal. You may not have heard of that. It's a HUD counseling center downtown, and there's one in Southside Community Development. Southside Community Development also builds homes. Now, the homes that they're building are in what they call revitalization areas, which means that they may not be the nicest areas known to mankind at that point in time, but let me tell you what, if you're getting a $50,000 grant, which one of my clients did get, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, and the requirement is you have to, anytime you're getting into the bond or the grant or anything like that, they have a payback period that you have to be a part of. In other words, some of them are 5 years, some of them are 10 years, which means that you either have to live in the house or own the house for a minimum of 5 to 10 years, okay? Now, the government loans, this is how I bought my first house. I bought my house with this one right here with some help through the grant. FHA is fantastic. I didn't have the greatest credit score. My wife is the one who's conscientious about making sure the payments are being made. I am wild and free, okay? I am wild and free. Don't strap me down with trying to balance a checkbook, because that's not me, okay? But my wife, she has it to the penny. So guess what I learned very quickly? After I bounced a few checks, I am no longer in charge of the checkbook, okay? My wife handles that. So my credit wasn't the greatest.
That was my wife. Chris, I'm not gonna tell you. Until I
We're gonna have
learned,
an altar call here in a couple seconds.
until I figured it out, it was my life, so that's why we're here.
Anyway, so just to share with you, the FHA is really designed to help people who haven't necessarily been extremely good with their credit. You can actually help yourself because you can get down to a 620 credit score. You can go to a 580 credit score, but 620 is where all of the goodies stop. So if you want to get a grant or down payment assistance or anything like that, 620 and above is where you need to be. Now, if you start here, anybody here a veteran? No veterans? You're a veteran, okay. So veterans have a fantastic benefit that is really designed for a first-time use. 100% financing, no mortgage insurance, fantastic, one of the best loans known to mankind. Subsidized interest rates, perfect, okay? But it is a government loan. It has this thing called the funding fee, which is very similar to mortgage insurance, but they do it by adding it to the loan. Long story, but if you start here, you don't want to stay here. You want to stay here. This is the best terms for the life of the loan. Nobody told me that when I bought my first house. Nobody told me that. I bought my first house with an FHA style loan. Worked great, got me in the house. I had no idea that they had this thing called mortgage insurance. The thing is with mortgage insurance with the government loan is it doesn't go away. And so if I had stayed with that over the 30 years, I would have paid $60,000 in wasted money. Because mortgage insurance is an insurance policy that you buy against yourself in case you default. It protects the bank, it doesn't protect you. but because you have enough risk, you have to have it, or the bank won't even lend you money. So it's a big deal. But if you start here, you want to end in conventional, because at some point in time with conventional, that mortgage insurance goes away. Do you have a place for $60,000? Could you use an extra 60? Probably. Okay, so now you've heard what I'm trying to say is if you start here, that's great, but don't stay here. Stay here. And the best thing is to find a way to pay the house off.
Wait, but what do you need to get a conventional loan? I don't think
So-
so conventional loans are for people that have X, Y, like,
Yeah, so conventional loans are actually fantastic loans. They actually have a first-time home buyer version of a conventional loan where you can put as little as 3% down. Now, 3% plus the legal fees for closing. So if you're dealing with a $300,000 home, that's $3,000, that's $9,000 plus closing costs, which is another $9,000, which means you're about 18. Okay, so kind of think through it, but the program right now is actually tremendously set up for first-time home buyers. And it's one of the more popular ones if you have at least 3% put down. And in many cases, Rachel can help you negotiate the closing costs too. So it's probably something worth your time to explore as you get into these pieces, okay? All right, moving on.
let me add something really quick.
Go ahead.
For the competitive part that Chris had previously mentioned, when sellers are looking at their offers, and they've got 5 to 10 offers, and they see how the buyer is paying, a conventional loan is gonna win over an FHA loan, or a USDA loan type of thing. Conventional to a seller means higher credit score, less risk, more money out of pocket than the government. That's not to say that the government loan is bad, it's just if the seller has an option, they're gonna go with a buyer that has the conventional loan versus the government loan. But if you're a first-time home buyer and you only have a government-backed loan, that's fine. We'll find you a house that doesn't have competition and they'll, you know what I mean? That's why he's mentioned like how it affects things competitively.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm about to be done, and Rachel's gonna come up here and talk a
Nope.
little bit. She's not gonna talk a little bit. So I'm gonna go through this document right here, which is, we call it Loanopoly. Loanopoly. Loanopoly right here is probably your best guide going forward. Because this really truly gives you the entire process of what you need to be thinking about as you're getting ready for this. Now there's several other files in here that you can take, and you can download everything. It's right on that QR code that's on the front of you. You can take a picture of that and download it later if you'd like to, or you can take these with you, it's up to you. But this Loanopoly piece right here is perfect because the first step you can see right here, right after start, is getting pre-approved.
AKA talking to him.
In other words, you need to set a schedule with me, and you can actually go to my website, my calendar is right on there, you can pick a spot, we can go through the whole thing right there and help you get set up for success. We'll
And
do a
he
Zoom
can figure
meeting.
out what loan type would work for you, he can figure out what needs to happen with your credit score, he can tell you how much money you might need out of pocket. That's your starting point, is talking to him.
So then once you're done with the pre-approval, and we've gotten everything to work, because sometimes things don't work right away. Sometimes things have to get, started and restarted, and we have to fix something or do something or work on something, and that's entirely fine. Because we're not gonna leave you alone in the process, we're gonna give you the next steps and help you get going. But the first step really is the pre-approval. Once you have that pre-approval already nailed down and going, then that's when you hook up with Rachel, and that's when you start going around looking for the home and trying to help get you set up with the home itself. Now, once you found the perfect home, what you're gonna do is you're gonna actually put in an offer. And like we've been talking a little bit about competition here, the competition can be serious in some places, but right now it's actually not too terribly serious, especially the further out of town you get. And so you actually have a really good opportunity. Now I have people ask me this question all the time, why would I wanna do that when the rates are high? Well, here's the reason, okay? And then I can just share with you from my business model. I have over 250 pre-approvals that are waiting for the rate to come down. So once the rate hits 6 or 5, guess who's coming back into the market? All of those people. Guess what's gonna happen when they do come in? That home that's been sitting is not gonna sit. And guess what? It's probably gonna have multiple offers, which means that if it was 300, it's probably gonna be more than that by the time you buy it. So it's better to buy it sooner with whatever it is that you can get in the door with and refinance later when the rates get better than it is to wait and sit on the sidelines, okay? One other piece to kind of think about with this is even in a market where the interest rates are a little high and homes have been sitting a little longer, they're still expecting a 7% appreciation on homes. Now, 7% appreciation means that $300,000 home next year is $322,000, which means that you just lost $22,000 worth of buying power just by waiting 1 year. So you have to think through how and where you want to go with this, because guess what? It may not be the perfect house, but it could be your perfect first rental. And you could start building wealth for your family by getting into something that serves for the time being, convert it to a rental, and then go buy the one that makes sense. I have people who do that every 2 to 3 years. Every 2 to 3 years, they get into a house, they buy a house, they live in it, then they stair step to the next one. And then they stair step to I have people that have bought 6 homes with me over the last 10 years. That's fantastic, right? That's something you could do. It really is. And you can do it the same way that I started, by getting started with maybe some form of down payment assistance program that helps you get in the door, and then you can start building from there. Now, some of the other things that you can see right here is make an offer, then application. The application is formal. Once the ratified contract comes in, we're gonna get everything going with the contract and start doing the appraisal, the processing, the appraisal order, the underwriting. You get to do a home inspection during the process, which is making sure that you're not getting yourself into trouble by buying a house that's so defective that you're gonna have a money pit. Anybody ever watch that movie, Money Pit? That is, I know that's super funny, but it's not super funny when it's your house, okay? So just kind of keep in mind that home inspection is pretty good.
That's where I come into, I advise you through the home inspection.
Right.
I help you figure out what's gonna be too big of a defect that we can't, maybe we don't have the funds to fix this, and what's some stuff that's manageable, what's, you know, maybe we should walk away from this property, is it a lemon, is it too far gone, that kind of stuff.
So then after that, once you get your commitment, which means that you've completed all of your underwriting processes and they're gonna give you the keys to the house, then you get we walk through the clear to close, you do your final walkthrough, you get your closing, and then right before you round go, that's when you get your keys. Now, there are certain things that do happen after closing that we'll talk to you about when that time comes, but for the most part, that is generally speaking the process as far as how that works. Now, we do have more stuff in here for you to kind of play with and kind of think through, which is like this one right here, your 30-day moving checklist. What are the costs associated and how do you look at the costs associated with a loan? And these are all something that you're gonna be able to download. In fact, the QR code's here. It's also gonna be in the presentation here in a second. These are the 4 simple steps. This one right here with a little circle in it, this actually talks about your credit. We've talked about your credit at the beginning. This actually helps you understand how your credit actually increases your buying power. And then last but not least, this is your home hunting checklist. This is to help you get set up for success as you start looking for homes. And it's a good idea to start checking and seeing what attributes you want in a home. And so just a little bit about what Rachel and I do as far as working is that we don't spend our time doing things a lot of our counterparts do. A lot of my counterparts, even in my same company, they spend a lot of money trying to advertise, trying to buy leads, try to do things like that. Rachel and I both work exclusively by referral. And so what we're trying to do is serve you at such a high level that you want to talk about us. That you actually, if somebody else is actually going out to buy a home, that you're like, oh, you gotta talk to Rich. Oh, you gotta talk to Chris. That's what we're looking for, because we find that that is the best way for us to invest. Because if we're dedicated to your needs and we don't advertise and spend, that keeps us, if we can dedicate ourselves to your needs and you can spread the word, that saves us from having to advertise, but it also allows us to dedicate our needs to everybody else that comes in our way. And that's really important to us, because we want to make sure that you're set up for success, not just short term, but long term. And this is a really big, important piece. This is my YouTube channel. I would love to have you be a part of my YouTube channel if you do want to come and be part of it. I post on here at least, well, I'm recording this one, so this will be posted on here sometime later today. And I certainly hope you can join me on it. The conversation's good. I do have some trolls that really don't like me, but that's okay. I'm hoping that you guys will like me and that you'll kind of join me in the conversation. Because, I mean, who doesn't like this, right? I mean, this is like cool, right? At least I think it is.
Get the right haircut.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so that's kind of it, and then this QR code right here is the same QR code that's actually right there on the stand-up boards, and which includes everything that's in the packet sitting right in front of you. And so certainly would love the opportunity to meet with you. And once again, we're not gonna put you in a WWE headlock and say you have to work with us. We're just gonna, give you an orientation and get you set up for success. And then after that, you guys can decide how best to move forward. Okay, was this helpful? That's a slide.
Thank you.
Oh,
Does
it's a
anyone have any
slide.
questions?
Yeah, anything I didn't cover? Anything I missed?
So do you have any specific agencies you work with to help with credit? So, cause that's gonna be the first stop.
Yes, so that's a great question. So Housing Opportunities Made Equal and Southside Community Development, I can certainly help you if you want me to pull your credit and look at it. I have no problem doing that, but I do need to let you know that sometimes you need to go to a HUD counselor, and Housing Opportunities Made Equal also does that. And you can go to them and have them give you a good, in fact, the great thing about going to Housing Opportunities Made Equal, and I didn't share this, is not only are they a HUD credit counselor, but they also give out grants. And you can piggyback these grants. So what that means is if you get the $15,000 one in January, you can also get the $10,000 one in January from Housing Opportunities Made Equal. And you can piggyback that on Virginia Housing, so now all of a sudden you got $25,000 that you can use towards this house purchase if you do it right. Now it is complex to do it that way, it's not for everybody, but it is something that you can do. Housing Opportunities Made Equal has a 6-week course where they put you through the motions on helping you get your credit restored and other things like that. And Southside Community Development's the same way, they both have that, so. And by all means, if you want to do an application, I'm more than happy to look at it and give you some suggestions. I'm not a credit counselor, but I certainly will give you some suggestions.
Yeah, and the cool thing about talking to Chris too is he's gonna piece together the best scenario for you. He's gonna find if there's grant opportunities for you, and find those opportunities for free money and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Now, I don't want all those chickens to have died in vain, so I really do need you to eat some chicken.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like-
Was this valuable? Was this valuable?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You got something over?
No.
You don't?
No, I
Can
didn't.
I take it for a minute?
Yeah, take it for a minute,
Good,
please.
good.
He wants to go in
Good.
there.
No,
Yeah, fill in.
So, no, I'm exactly right, that's exactly right.